You think kids drift away slowly. You think distance happens by accident. But the truth is far colder. Most children abandon their parents long before the world notices. Not with a scream, not with a fight, but with silence disguised as "I'm busy." With distance disguised as "I need space." With betrayal packaged in modern language, boundaries, healing, self-care. Schopenhauer saw it before psychology, before therapy culture, before Instagram told an entire generation that cutting off your parents is self-love. He said almost all human suffering is born from relationships, and no relationship breeds more silent suffering than parenthood. You raise a child, you wipe their tears, you break your bones so they don't have to break theirs. And one day, you wake up and realize you were not raising a legacy. You were raising someone who will walk away. You gave them your youth, your money, your sleep, your sanity. But the will, that blind hunger Schopenhauer revealed, doesn't honor sacrifice. It consumes it, then moves on. Parents don't get abandoned in old age. The abandonment starts the moment the child no longer needs you. And here's the punch in the throat. The first betrayal your child commits is not hatred. It's forgetting. You spent your whole life believing betrayal comes from outsiders, enemies, competitors, jealous relatives, backstabbers at work. But the harshest betrayal doesn't knock on your door. It grows up in your living room, wears the clothes you paid for, eats the food you cooked, sleeps peacefully, while you stay awake worrying. And one day, without warning, it calls you a burden. Not to your face, not loudly. The modern betrayal is polite, civil, professional. "I need space. I have my own life. We'll come next month." Next month becomes next year. Next year becomes never. And the child who once clung to your finger now scrolls past your messages like spam. This isn't an accident. This is a pattern of nature, psychology, and modern culture colliding. Schopenhauer didn't blame the government, the culture, or society first. He blamed you for trusting the illusion in the first place. He said most of the pain in our life comes from attaching hope to other people, especially the ones we think owe us loyalty. Because here is the real punch in the teeth. You weren't raising a loyal soldier. You were raising a future stranger, and that stranger is shaped by forces you never saw coming. Truth 1. You raise them with love. They leave with entitlement. Kids don't grow with gratitude. They grow with expectation. The food wasn't a gift. It was normal. The house wasn't security. It was default. The clothes weren't sacrifice. They were deserved. You worked overtime. They asked why you didn't make more. You bought them a phone. They asked why it wasn't the newer one. The problem with sacrifice is simple. When it's constant, it becomes invisible. And what's invisible is never valued. Truth 2. When children outgrow dependence, they outgrow affection. Love begins as survival. When they needed you, they adored you. When they were helpless, you were their hero. When they had nightmares, your presence was the cure. But independence rewires the emotional contract. They needed you, so they valued you. Now they don't need you, so they detach. Humans are transactional by instinct. Only philosophy dares admit it. Schopenhauer exposed the lie. We think love is pure. He said love is disguised need. That's why the calls stop. That's why the visits shrink. That's why conversations die. You didn't lose importance. You lost utility. Truth 3. You represent sacrifice. They represent escape. When your child looks at you, they don't see who you are. They see what they might become. Your slow walk, your tired eyes, your back pain, your medicine, You aren't a person in their eyes. You're a warning label, a trailer of their own future. And the one genre no one wants to watch is decline. And modern culture pours gasoline on that fear. Anti-aging, anti-responsibility, anti-obligation. Old age used to be honor. Now it's content. You're aging wrong. You're living wrong. You're outdated. Children don't pull away because they hate you. They pull away because you expose the lie they worship. The lie that time can be outrun. Truth 4. Social media turned selfishness into a virtue. There was a time when cutting off your parents was considered extreme, shameful, tragic. Today, it's packaged as enlightenment. No contact. Protect your energy. Block toxicity. And the definition of toxicity? Anything that causes discomfort. Anything that demands accountability. Anything that expects responsibility. You tell your daughter to respect herself, and she reposts a quote calling you controlling. You tell your son to work harder, and he reposts advice on cutting off negativity. Everything mother and father stood for, discipline, sacrifice, expectation, has been rebranded as oppression. Society doesn't teach kids to love their parents. It teaches them to outgrow them. Comment: modern loyalty is temporary. Truth 5. Children don't abandon you when you're old. They abandon you when you're no longer beneficial. You fed them. They stayed. You paid. They stayed. You solved problems. They stayed. But now you ask for help, you ask for time, you ask for presence, and they vanish behind excuses dressed in professionalism. I'm working. We'll see. I'll try. Work becomes the alibi. Ambition becomes the religion. Success becomes the justification. You raised them to fly, but you assumed flight meant visits. You didn't realize flight means away. Schopenhauer would tell you, the will does not form bonds. It forms strategies. Once your role is complete, you're archived, not honored. Truth 6. Daughters betray with resentment. Sons betray with silence. A daughter often rewrites the story emotionally. The rules you set become trauma. The protection you gave becomes patriarchy. The sacrifices you made become manipulation. She joins her husband's family, calls his mother a queen, calls you stressful. For sons, the betrayal is quieter, polished, respectable. He sends money instead of presents. He gives gifts instead of time. He smiles instead of connection. Sons don't slam the door. They slowly fade until you become a scheduled obligation. Both betrayals hurt. One burns hot, one freezes slow, but both leave scars. Truth 7. Children rewrite history to protect their ego. The mind cannot accept the guilt of abandonment, so it invents justification. Abandonment becomes healing. Neglect becomes growth. Distance becomes peace. You become the villain, not because you were, but because the story demands one. Freud called it projection. Schopenhauer called it illusion. You call it heartbreak. Because nothing hurts more than watching your own child rewrite the book of your life and omit the chapters that kept them alive. Truth 8. You taught them to be strong. They used that strength against you. You told your son to be independent, and he became independent of you. You told your daughter to never tolerate disrespect, and now she calls discipline disrespect. You raised them to have a voice, and now that voice testifies against you. The paradox of parenting. If you raise them weak, the world destroys them. If you raise them strong, they destroy you. Nature has a dark sense of humor. Truth 9. You confused sacrifice with guarantee. You thought giving everything guaranteed something in return. Respect, loyalty, presence, care. But sacrifice isn't a contract. You gave love as investment, expecting loyalty as interest. But children are not banks. They are borrowers, and most repay nothing. Schopenhauer's philosophy slaps here. Attachment is the rope you hand to others to hang your happiness with. CTA, engagement. Comment. Sacrifice is not a guarantee. Truth 10, evolution. Cares about their future, not your survival. You think abandonment is failure, but it is also biology. Animals don't stay with aging parents. Life pushes them forward, not backward. Humans try to pretend we're different, but when stress rises, mortality appears, or independence calls. Biology takes the wheel. Children don't abandon out of hatred. They abandon out of instinct. Nature prioritizes the new, not the old. Evolution doesn't care about your memories, only your replacement. Truth 11. You were a stage in their journey, not the destination. Every child sees their life as the main storyline. Parents aren't the main characters. They are the prologue, the early chapter, the setup, the backstory. You remember their entire childhood with emotion. They remember selective moments with convenience. Your sacrifice was defining for you. For them, it was background noise. You are a museum of moments. They only tour once a decade. Truth 12. Abandonment doesn't begin when they stop visiting. It begins when they stop listening, when your advice becomes outdated, when your cautions become complaints, when your wisdom becomes interference. Abandonment begins in conversation before it begins in geography. Once your voice stops mattering, your presence is next. You can't beg adults to honor childhood. You can't guilt someone into loyalty. They'll resent you more. You want dignity? Stop waiting by the phone. Stop measuring your worth through their attention. Stop living for scraps of affection. Schopenhauer's solution is brutal but freeing. Detach before disappointment arrives. Love without chaining your sanity to the outcome. Give without expecting gratitude in return. You raised them. You fed them. You protected them. That was your duty, not your retirement plan. Your children are part of your life story, but you are not the center of theirs. You were the builder, the shield, the foundation. But foundations are buried once the house is built. Here's the truth you must swallow whole. Respect isn't owed, it is chosen, and not everyone chooses correctly. So build your strength, rebuild your identity, find friendships, find purpose, find a life outside the title of parent. You existed before them. You exist beyond them.